All right, guys, we're going to begin here soon. Sorry about the technical difficulties in the last one. Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome to RC Conspiracies. Tonight we're going to be talking about something that I know some of you have been wondering, and that is, I thought that you weren't going to get a Max. That's kind of what I'd said, is that it wasn't something that I was too interested in at the time. And so what changed and caused me to go ahead and pick one up the other day when they became available? So we're going to be talking about that, as well as just some of the features of the Max and things that people have been asking about in the comments. And that kind of will drive a little bit of the first question as an answer, is if you guys haven't noticed, the comments have gone nuts since I started posting videos of this. So there's that engagement factor as kind of one of the factors that caused me to pick it up. But that's just one of a few. But before we move on, guys, I do want to go back and just show you guys a little bit of what we have to offer here at RC Conspiracies. We have more than just a podcast or a video cast or whatever you want to call it. We do also have some merchandise for the people that really like the show and want to look cooler by wearing it or putting it on their car or their computer. So you too can look super cool sporting some RC Conspiracy swag. Anyway, guys, that's just, a needless plug. But it does help me pay for the cost of hosting the podcast and all that. So it is helpful if that is something that you guys are interested in. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take a quick look in the chat, see what you guys are saying. Then I'm going to pull up my notes and we'll kind of go through some of my thoughts so far about the Max. What was that turning point that made me actually change my mind? Because I was saving my money up for a couple of things that we also want to talk about because we had a little hint being dropped by the RC fairies, the conspiracy fairies, you may say. But yeah, we've got a bunch of you popping in here this time. PA Car Guy 1234 says, "Can you shout out my Instagram? It's at Pennsylvania_car_guy_210. If you guys want to follow him, you can go ahead and do that. I don't know what's on his channel, so I'm not going to say yay or nay or give any kind of impression about what you'll find there. So James Price is back. Thanks for coming back when the last chat wasn't working. We'll go ahead and check it this time. Ah, yes, we are working. I love it when technology works, and it's very frustrating when it doesn't. Driftomaniacs is here. Colin Leonard, Anthony Cooper. Driftomaniacs says, you test drove one and saw how good it was. He must have been talking to somebody. Oh, I clicked on the other one and it was dead. Yes, I killed the other one because it wasn't working. Driftomaniacs, he's guessing as to why I picked one up, because I test drove it and saw how good it was. Swampers RC says the aliens were jamming you. They were. I forgot my tinfoil. Dan Brando is in here. He says he loves his Max. That's awesome to hear, man. So yes, you can actually, speaking of, Drifto says he likes the banner. These are actually really cool. I had to test one out. I got it from the merch store and paid the full price for it just to see what it was like. It's called a wall tapestry. And it's ginormous for, I think I paid $34 for it. I couldn't believe how big it was. My dog is laying, that's the feet of the dog right there. He's laying down. He lays down funny. Thought for the day. Drifto, do you think they'll drop another big release as we approach XNAS? Which is great for X-Max. Max. JD Passel's here. The RC Basement. Raymond Miller. We buy, wreck, we build RC, we drive, watch YouTube about RC. Very cool. All right, so Drifto had a thought. I actually didn't get to test drive one before I bought it. I I didn't even see one driven, except maybe on your channel. I watched you guys do the speed tests, and I remember actually thinking, wow, that thing rolls, as they're coming to the end and turning it, it tended to roll, is one of the things I kept seeing. And I watched there was a skate park bash that we had seen from one of the hobby shops, and he'd taken to a small skate park, and it looked like he couldn't control it. And I thought it was driving, but I think part of it is this truck is a little bit unwieldy. It's tough to control on 4S, especially probably in that kind of a scenario. But we'll talk about that. So what was it that made me want to do that? First, I'm going to answer Driftomaniacs. He's asking, banners $20, wall tapestry is $40. Yes, it's a big wall tapestry, and it's fabric, and so it packs up real nice. But you could actually, if you ordered it now, they've got the you can buy it under your own pricing and not have to pay the markup, so you could get it cheaper. But back to the Max, and let's talk about it, because it's an interesting vehicle. I really like the X Max. I've told you for a long time, it's probably one of my favorite vehicles that I've ever had, RC-wise, is the X Max. Still have the 6S version. Part of me I'm going to kind of tease my hand a little bit here and say I kind of wish that I've put this money toward an 8S X Max, since I don't have one. And that's, I think, going to be a little bit of the running theme as we go through here and talk about some of this. There's been a couple of videos that have gone out, and I should pull one up here. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was why I chose, or why I am not going to buy the Max. And actually, I'd not seen this channel before, although a lot of you have. And it actually is a really great channel. I'm trying to find the channel for you guys really quick here. If somebody remembers what it is and can help me out here. Because then he went and he did buy the Max. Why can't I find it? I'll show you guys where I'm looking. Oh, here it is. Everything wrong with the Traxxas Max. So that was from Razor RC, and he hadn't bought one, so he was going based off of what we all go off of in the beginning, is what we see on their pages, the pricing, a lot of things like that. He did actually go out and buy one, I think, like the next day or 2 days later. And he gave it a pretty good shakedown and beatdown. But it was the first I'd seen the channel, and I actually went through all his content. Really great content. And, I wasn't being argumentative, but I was trying to give some counterpoints to what he'd said in the video in here. I'm going to try and pull this up, and hopefully it won't play. He did make some really good points in here. I actually wrote a really long thing, which isn't typical of me. But one of the first things he said was that he felt it was overpriced, but he also felt the 4S Creighton was overpriced, which, that was one of my first things. Like, well, I don't agree with that. And then I kind of went into where RCs were a little bit ago, even a year ago, 2 years ago, when we were all buying the stuff from China that was brushless and like $300, because you couldn't find anything brushless for under $350. Let alone something like those Creighton 4S's or anything of that nature in that price point. So one of it was that it was all plastic, that, he preferred metal chassis, some of that stuff. And he does have a race background, and so he does have metal chassis and things like that to go off of. And so it really comes down to, he had opinions, I had opinions. I respect his opinions completely. I just wanted to give some other opinions as well to that. And so Filthy Kill RC says that everything he said was spot on, and I still have a differing opinion of that. I think that there is completely the $500 I don't know, 530. There's $500 in this RC when it comes down to it. Just like I think there's $400 in the Creighton when it comes down to it. If you look up a set of really good shocks, name brand shocks, we're not going to go off-brand any of that, that are as big as the Traxxas Max shocks, you're going to be looking $60 to $80 for a set of 4 of those shocks. So that alone, on top of having plastic ones. The question is, and so I always have, so now that I've had it, I have point and counterpoint that I want to kind of to do. And so the point and counterpoint is price. Yes, I think that they have close to the value of what it is in the truck. The question is, do they need to have that value in the truck? Does it need to have telemetry in a basher? I put the stuff up on my screen on my last video so you could see what it does. It records it, which is neat, but it's like a flash file or something. It doesn't give you a video file when you're done. So I had to go back and play it back and then do a screen recording on my phone to even get that video to make it useful to me, which is really only in the video sense. Because when I'm bashing, I'm not looking down at my phone. Because then I have to buy a clip. I already had to buy a $35 adapter to even see the telemetry on my phone through the controller and pairing it and all of that. So that's another thing. So you're adding another $35 if you want to have that feature. I really wanted to test it out, and so I did. So I'm going to pause on that point, and the point is the value there? I think it is. The question is, does it need to be? Does it need all of the upgrades that put it at such a high price point and make it what I keep calling it a Cadillac of an RC, of a basher, because you're taking basically a lot of the same specs of a lot of other cars, but you kind of make it a luxury version. But this is a basher, and do you need a luxury version basher? So let me know what you think about that in the comments, and I'm going to go actually back through some of the comments and see what you guys have been saying, because I've been watching it tick away as I've been talking here. So you guys are being helpful. Yeah. As far as just telling me who it was. So thank you for that. Chase McNeil jumped in. Welcome. Filthy Ghost says, I say sell the Max and get the 6xS Max. Get an 8X. Oh, sell both the Max and the 6xS Max and get an 8S Max and Mojave. Yeah, so the Mojave is what I was saving the money for, and then there's been hints and stuff about something else coming from Arma that I'm guessing will be 8S. I don't know, but they keep talking big, and the only way I can see it going bigger at this point is to do something that's 8S as that X-Max killer that everybody talks about, which I just say is an X-Max competitor. So that's one of the things I was really saving for. But I'll be all right. I should be able to still save up for that again for several reasons, which, again, we'll talk about in just a minute here. Dan Brando says he has the X-Max in it as his favorite besides the Revo 2.0. Really? And he's saying that the Max handles a bit brickish compared to my X-Max. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about. And that's what I want to talk about, those really big, expensive shocks that are put in there, is what's the point? It's like overkill. Like the car handles like it's a brick. You land, even if you land 4 on the floor, it bounces and rolls over onto its lid. I can't believe how many times I've had to use the self-riding or had to go and walk and pick up the car. Probably more than any RC car I've ever owned. I've put this thing on its lid, scraped it across the cement. It always ends up back on its wheels, sometimes with self-riding, but it flips and rolls and it cartwheels a ton. And when you get it cartwheeling, it is unstoppable. It just keeps cartwheeling. Razor RC stood next to me when I did the video of the Max versus the X Max in the store. I'd have waited until I'd driven one before I did a video like that, though. And he says Razor does a lot of racing. That's Driftomaniacs. Yeah, I've seen he does a lot of racing. He has a lot of really great videos. And so, yeah, I totally subbed him, even though like I didn't agree with that video. I went through and watched a bunch of his because you could tell that he knew what he was talking about. And it was very well thought out. But again, we can have differing opinions, especially when it comes to cost and things like that, because it's all opinion based, really. And so you can have a differing opinion without needing to dislike somebody or whatever. And it wasn't like an angry type of disagreement with them. Dan Brandon said, minus the shafts, A-Main proved they hold up. A-Main, yeah, I don't know. Did they do any jumping with it? I've seen some of their videos. I've seen like the parking lot stuff. Chase McNeil says JT broke his Max in 24 hours. Do you think this will be a common problem? I don't know, man. I beat the tar out of mine. One of the notes I wrote down is, it is tough, but it has to be tough because it crashes a lot. And I mean a lot. I'm still fighting this cold here, guys. Excuse me while I mute my microphone and cough every once in a while. So yeah, it's tough because it has to be tough. There's so much power in this thing. As far as and Drifto's saying it right here, the power to weight ratio is huge, as this thing covers its yard faster than his 6S Armas. It's carrying more into the corners. It sits higher. It sits like a monster truck. So it's one of the faster monster trucks you can have. And so some of the people are like, oh, well, this is great when I need a small car where I can run where I can't run my X-Max. Well, that's not the case. This thing covers ground so fast that you need as much or more room than an X-Max. I can run the X-Max in my backyard, no problem. It's getting dicey running the Max back there. Troy Hobbies is here. He said he started a YouTube channel. I've only posted a couple vids. You guys know what to do. Go and give him some of his first subs. Let's get him going. So yeah, comments are starting to move. So it's all RC break in time. Yes, they did. Drifto's got a conspiracy. Dun, dun, dun. Let's play some music for this one when we're going to read this. So, Driftomaniac says, well, he says a lot in here. I'm trying to catch up. But the thing that caught my attention is he said, I said 8S Max killer middle of last year, and that phrase seemed to stick. However, I think Traxxas will have something to counter it, and they're waiting for Arma to pull the trigger first. What do you guys think about that? That seems to be the case so far with the current releases, is that it's tit for tat, back and forth, and Traxxas is trying to jump on whatever thunder Arma is making. And so Arma's definitely pulled some really cool stuff out of their hat this year. I'm going to definitely say that. I appreciate what they're doing for the hobby with the many, many releases that they've had. And the different price points that they're bringing them in at is going to really make it so that people can jump in at varying levels depending on their, one, money available, two, skill level, three, just get them all. Those people. So it's definitely, I think there's something coming from Arma based on what we've seen on Facebook again. And that's probably what we're going to talk about midweek. That's what I was going to talk about tonight. But with me being up in, we actually were just in Washington, D.C. at Nationals Park this morning doing interviews and stuff like that. And so then I got in my car and drove all the way home. And this was easier for me to pull together quickly than the conspiracies about what Arma's got cooking. And based on their naming structures, I'm sure it's going to be something 8S BLX or 8S something, because it might not be BLX if they end up going Spectrum. I don't know what the BLX stands for, actually, with Spectrum naming conventions. But you guys need to slow down in the chat. I'm trying to catch up here. Chase McNeil says, JT broke his Max in 24 hours. Do you think this will be a common problem? I don't know. I don't know what caused his to break. At what point it probably snapped off of some other hit. And he did hit, I know, on one or two of them, kind of a weird sideways hit on that wheel. But if you guys saw mine, I mean, I was hitting so hard from flips and all of that on every single wheel, which also speaks to the strength of that servo, which people are saying, oh, it's just plastic gears, whatever. I mean, it's been taking a beating. That 285-inch torque servo in there has been taking a beating with those front landings. One of the things I think is also improved in the smaller scale of this thing is the bumpers. I destroyed the front and rear bumpers on the first bashes with my X-Max, and like they were, pushing the body different directions. These front ones and rear ones on this seem to be holding their shape pretty well and not getting pushed in like the X-Max ones did for me. All right, so playing catch up here. Filthy Co says maybe some suspension tuning is needed on the new Max. The problem that I have with that is it's already a brick to drive, and it chassis slaps anyway. So it's got really stiff suspension, and it's still hitting that front end. It sits lower, and it digs into the ground. I mean, it's tearing up holes in my yard, even when I'm landing flat, with the chassis slapping and the way that the front end is designed on it, which is probably also why it dug out those front screws. So, I mean, I could stiffen it up, put thicker oil in it, shock oil, maybe soften the springs and it'll compress slower, but soak it up. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss. So Ready Set RC says BLX means brushless extreme. Thank you for that. I did not know that. That's cool to know. So it could still be something else. I'm trying to catch up here. Drifto says that's where he just said it. RC Basement says, Tony, you'll find the money if an Arma X-Max killer comes out. We all will. You know it, man. I have stuff I'm ready and willing to sell. Swampers RC says, I think it's absolutely necessary for it. Oh, it's coming in so fast. You're pushing them on me. Filthy Co left. Good night, man. Wow, I'm way behind. He said it's necessary for it to have the high-value parts it comes with. It seems to need a little more help in certain areas. Now, yeah, it needs definitely to have the TSM in it. That is definitely true. Jake Ryman says he wants to get an Axial Yeti. Save your money, Jake. I had one. It's one of the two cars, well, in the first couple years that I sold. Jake Ryman says, what am I drinking? Coke Zero, man. Filthy Co, the 4S Outcast is a stunt truck. The 4S Creighton is the X-Max, or the Max's competition. That is true. I'm working on getting a 4S Creighton. Sorry. Dan Brando says, as brickish as I mentioned, I still would not sell it. It's a hell of a jumper once you can learn the throttle, which I'm still figuring out. It's really easy to throttle the bigger jumps if you're just jumping straight. It's actually harder to do the smaller jumps because it hits with so much speed. That back end drops so quick that by the time you right it, it's going too far. Then you try and right it again, and then when you land it does a slap, and so then it tumbles like crazy. So it's those smaller jumps where you have less time to get it to level out and not be on an immediate change when it hits. That's the hard part. How's it going, True Boys RC? Just joined in. Driftomaniac says the one thing I have not mentioned are the brakes, which the brakes are outstanding on this. It does stop really, really well. Dan Brando says they're almost too good. I don't think so. I think they're like spot on. As far as it's one of the best braking RC cars that I have. Not like breaking in half or breaking apart, but as far as stopping, the stopping power of it's pretty amazing. And the reverse speed is amazing too. If you saw that standing front flip that it did in reverse. So you are right, Driftomaniacs. The brakes are really, really good on this thing. As far as speed goes, people are saying 52 for 4S, not impressed. 52 is stupid for a monster truck 1/10 scale like this. It's crazy. Control-wise, you're getting a little bit of ballooning from the tires. Wouldn't want much more than that. It says it'll do 60 plus if you change the gearing. No need. It's crazy. It's hard to get at that speed because it wants to keep wheeling even at like 75% power. So yeah, I really, really think that they've got a few of those things on point. I'm trying to go through what you guys are saying, and then we'll go back to what I had down. So one of the things, yeah, TSM is a must because it's really hard to control. Yeah, it can get a little bit hairy with that much power on 4S. 3S, no problem. TSM wouldn't be necessary. 4S, it's appreciated. I do like it and find it to be very helpful to have TSM. And yeah, I definitely would want that, especially getting in some dirt and stuff. Plastic, that's one of the big complaints. And again, I don't get you guys complaining with plastic. Oh, there's no value in plastic. I don't think that having metal parts should make it that much more expensive. If the plastic is done as well as it's done on this Max, in my opinion, the way that the chassis is made and the way that the bulkhead and the shock towers, I guess, are formed right into it, the way that they absorb impact is just, I think it puts metal chassis to shame, honestly. It's one of the best, and it goes back to the Max as well. It's one of the strongest chassis out there, and it's so easy to work on. So that's my opinion. Again, doesn't mean that you can't have a differing opinion, but metal bends, plastic, it'll break, but good luck breaking this chassis unless you're Kevin Talboting that thing. Like they did in that one huge air one where they had those two ramps that they were launching, and they broke that one pretty much in half, which was pretty epic. The Max out of the box is the tiny wire they use for LEDs is ridiculous, actually. That was one of my gripes here on my list, is why would you put in a basher any wire that is that thin? Even if it's overkill, or, just put a bigger wrapping around it, something to protect those wires, because I think what happened is the body on mine popped like they do on the Max and the X Max, and it went down, and I think it just sheared that wire. So still have to fix that. Hopefully it'll fix easy. But I don't count it being plastic against it or against any value that's seen in a vehicle, except maybe shocks. But chassis, nah. You can have really, really tough plastic chassis, especially when they're built like this thing is. And the manufacturing, all that went into the design of that is insane. They really thought out that chassis. Kevin Talbot is now a verb. I need to make that a t-shirt. Kevin Talbot is a verb. So the big shocks, that was one of the things. So one of mine was, the next one was, this thing is tough and it needs to be. And remember what I said about control. It's very difficult to control with the speed and power that it has, and that winds you up crashing a lot with it. I actually did pretty well with it my very first time out on the wet grass. I don't know what happened this last time out. I was trying to go bigger. And I probably wouldn't actually jump it like I was trying to in the last video. Some of it comes down to just I'm durability testing things. So when I get something new, I like to put it through some really tough stuff right off the bat. And so going back to answer the question I haven't answered, which is what changed my mind. Well, it's it's kind of lame. There wasn't any one thing that was like, I have to have this, except that I could get it somewhat early, that the releases weren't coming out for a couple days, but they had the demo one available. And I thought, well, I can get this up there and it'll get some views and it'll get some conversation going. It'll get some comments, because the one thing that Traxxas does is it brings out the fanboys and it brings out the haters. And so that I'm neither. I'll just, go out there and say that. I'm not a Traxxas fanboy. I'm not a Traxxas hater. I don't necessarily like some of the, I call it lawyer bullying that has gone on. But I also understand some to a degree that when you have intellectual rights, you want to protect them. But that said, I don't think it's been good for us as hobbyists. So it's been good for them and their bottom line, but not us as hobbyists. So let me come back to some of the comments here. You guys are going crazy. Swamper says metal chassis bend. RC Masters joined in. Booster FPV says maybe Proline come out with some shock kit like they did with the X Max. That'd be cool. Or even if Traxxas just has some different weight of shocks, would be nice. But again, I don't know how much softer you want to go, because I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about it, but they chassis slap like crazy. Even dropping it from your waist to the ground when you're getting out of the car, you just hear it smack. Now, some of that, I think the sound is the body, and the system that they have is plastic, and it's got that hard plastic clamps, and I think that makes a little bit of noise against the shock tower, so it sounds a little worse than it is. Plus, it echoes underneath the body, so I think that you've got that going on. Crazy Man says, anyone else notice the audio isn't synced? I've noticed that on some of the playback ones. So what do they have that makes it different? One of the things, so Traxxas has a selling point is that their controller is just way better. This one here. So it does have foam, which is nice. I like the foam wheel, although it did feel really small after all my other controllers. The wheel itself feels kind of smallish. And it's hard to one-handed drive, but that's not a negative to it as far as it's. I wish you didn't have to use this menu of clicking and things that you have to, like, memorize a whole coding system just to. You have to be able to program your, VCR to be able to get through one of these things. And I'm getting older, so I don't know if I can do that anymore. And then you have to do it on this controller. There's just not knobs and stuff. So it has more features in it. It has TSM. So there's some tech in there. But it's just kind of, I wish I didn't have to go into an app to do some of that stuff. And I don't know why Traxxas hasn't released something with a screen on it, like a Spectrum or whatever, that have a digital display. Why don't they have an upgraded one where I don't need an app? Things I wonder. Booster FPV wants to know, am I excited to get the Kraken ATV-RC? I am, but if it doesn't get funded, it's only like 17% funded right now. And there's like, I don't know, 3 weeks left. If it doesn't get funded, all of us get our money back and it doesn't get made. So that's kind of the bummer. Eduardo just picked up a Red Cat Gen 8, and wow, for $300 makes him smile. That's awesome. All right, how do people are asking about the infraction tires hold up on 4S? It all depends on how much you do burnouts. You can still do burnouts on 4S. You can drift it. So, I mean, the real test is, and the real question marks that I have is, I got this again because I could get it early. I thought that, you know, with YouTube there'd be some, you know, good interaction. It'd be interesting to have up and see what people say and what people think. But also, you know, I just remember that experience I had with the X Max, that first one, and how great it was. I definitely can say that I don't feel that about the Max. And again, like I said, I wish that I would have gotten an 8S Max. And that's kind of what I would probably look to tell people is, what's the market for the Max? And that's the hard thing for me as I'm trying to look at it. Like, what void does this fill? Because it doesn't, like, put you in an area where you drive it in a smaller space because it's so fast and it covers ground so quickly. It's lighter, but what does it do as a four-wheel drive monster truck that you couldn't do with a Stampede or already with the e-Revo or a four-wheel drive Rustler? Like, what does it do? Well, one thing it did is it raised the price of the e-Revo. So because this came out at $530, they realized that their e-Revo is a 6S and $550. So instead of making the Max $500, what they did is they made the e-Revo $30 more. So it's now $580 instead of $550. To put that $50 difference between their 4S and 6S vehicle, which is kind of a thumbs down in my opinion, if you ask me. But you didn't. I just asked myself. Elride Bash at RC says, do you see some of the same stunt capabilities with the Max at the Arma 4S lineup? It's really clumsy. Like you said. I'm drying the wheels out. I've put 4 little holes in it to make any water in there fly out when it's going 52 miles an hour. It'll just pull it out of the wheels or the foams, any water that might be in there. And then I'm going to try jumping it again. But it's pretty unwieldy in the air. I just got my Outcast, and it took a little minute to get used to it as well. But once you have it, it's way more controlled, even for a stunt vehicle. So it's, yeah, one of those things where it's like, it's a 6S and not a 4S, the one that I have, so you can't really compare them, and it's 8 scale. So it's bigger and just more planted. That's why I really want to try like the 4S Creighton so I can give you guys a better comparison. I honestly, I like, and I wish I hadn't just sold my Granite, because I would have liked to have compared that one to the Max. I was driving the Max in my cul-de-sac, and I was getting ready to do that Street Bash video for you guys the night before I did it. And a neighbor was out, and he was asking me about it. He works for my neighbor doing construction stuff, and he had just come back after their day of work, and he was getting ready to head home. But he was watching me drive it, and he was asking, man, how much does something like that cost? I'm like, this one's $600. Now, that's what mine was with the light kit. Some of you guys got better deals than a light kit one, and that's cool. But he's like, oh, wow. I said, but honestly, he was impressed by the speed. I said, honestly, my 3S BLX went the same speed, and it's only $300. It's a Granite. I said, it's about the same size. It's a little bit smaller. It sits lower, but it's actually more controlled with that same amount of speed. It doesn't have the same torque, but it was easier to control, easier to flip, off the same setup that I had in my backyard when I was doing it in my front yard, and I was immediately trying to do front flips with it, if you guys remember, and I broke it. But back flips was no problem. Very controlled in the air, and $300. So he asked me, well, would I sell that one? So I brought it out to show him, and I was caught off guard, so I said, yeah, sure. And I ended up selling it to him with the 3S battery for a great deal. He got a great deal on it, and but I'm having seller's regret, because that's one of my favorite bashers. I told you guys that. It's so small, so lightweight, so easy to just throw in the car and go. And it does leak oil out of the shocks. Easy enough to refill for $5, for many refills. Because that's one of the gripes is the plastic shocks, shock bodies. Didn't bother me. Even when they were completely like empty and bouncy, I thought it still handled pretty decently, and I drive it like that. So let me jump back. You guys are commenting here. Dan Brando says, I think it's durability that sells it to me. It's definitely durable. I'll give you that. Again, it has to be, because it crashes a lot and it's a little bit harder to control. People saying it should have been $499. Creighton 6S or version 4 or the Max, which would you recommend? I've never driven a Creighton 6S version 4. It's on my want list still very much. I would have bought that as probably my first one of their 6S if they weren't doing the anniversary edition one, which I ended up going for. But actually, now that I watched that Mojave, holy cow, that thing is a beast. Tell you what, that's something I'm definitely wanting. RC Tanks and Truck is in the house. If you guys haven't seen that little motor engine thing that he's been installing in his, I don't know, is it 8 scale truck? Defender. It's awesome. You should go check it out. Really, really cool stuff. Getting lots of attention for it, which he should, because it's such a cool build. Such a cool build. So what are some of the things, going back to the Max I had here, what are some of the things that give it some of that value? Definitely is going to be, it's got really great tires, I think. It does have the telemetry. It does have fans. Now, some people have had them break. Mine are working just fine. I did pop one off, but it went right back on. Not a biggie. But it has heat sink, has fans, has metal drive shaft going through the middle here. It's got that specialized, it's not like a slipper system. I can't think of the name of what they call that system in there. But the metal diff gears, all of that, and it's pretty beastly drivetrain going through there. See if they show it in here. So yeah, they do have the aluminum shaft. This is it. The torque biasing center drive. This thing right here is pretty cool tech. And the way that it allows you to have that power for the wheelies and all of that is really, really cool. And the way that they do all that gearing is really neat. The Cush drive. That's it. The Cush drive in it is pretty sweet. Thank you, Green Frog, who is in the house. John McClellan says he's getting the Mojave here soon. Aussie RC Playground is in the house. Must be wake up time in Australia. RC Sick here. So yeah, so those are some of the things that are cool and do give it some of that value. But again, I question what I would lower in quality to bring the price down and to make it more affordable, because it is a basher, and a 1/10 scale basher at that. And it's honestly, I think, better suited as a 3S basher, because on 4S it's just dumb power. And so maybe it's a matter of changing out the gearing so it's not so torquey. But it's a handful. It's a really big handful. And it needs a wider stance. So one of the things is the way that they set the offset on the rim, pretty much it's on the very outside of the wheels. And so when you put it on, the actual rim covers over most of the arms. Not most of it, but it covers like your C-hub carrier and stuff like that. And it encloses that, which makes it probably so it doesn't break things as easily. But it makes it so that it's harder and more unwieldy to drive. So, it's lunchtime. That's what it is. So I actually don't even know. Yeah, that would make more sense. So yeah, that's kind of some of my thoughts on that. It definitely has, extra money into their controller, into some of the drivetrain, but the shocks especially, and the chassis, the build on the chassis is insane. Just like on the X Max. So there's some value there, but again, what is the need for it when you've got the e-Revo in that price point already, a little bit bigger 6S? You have the X Max, which is already awesome. I would have tried to make that scaled down X Max into a Max that's more affordable to get people saying, I love this thing, but I really want that really big one now because I know I like the Max. I love how it works, and I got it for $350, $400. I want to upgrade to the big one. And so I think it's an easier push because right now at $530, I'm like, man, I'm just going to save the rest and get the big one, which isn't what I did, but it's, if I wasn't, YouTubing, that's what I would have done, because I honestly, I don't know where it fits in the marketplace at that price point, except into the gotta have it people's hands. So the gotta have it people are the people that just gotta have everything that comes out, and then a buzz, and that's part of what pushed me over the edge. When I said I wasn't going to get it, it pushed me over the edge to get it. So I was with Razor RC, who was doing the What's Wrong with the Max, and then I just went for it when it was available. RC Master says, I aggressively agree. I don't know who you're speaking to. Maybe to me? Dan Brando, pound for pound in scale terms, I believe it weighs more than its big brother, which I believe is the reason it handles the way it does. So the thing that I love about the X Max is when I brake on that thing in a corner, the way that it sits into that suspension. It doesn't roll over. That's the one thing. It almost never rolls over when you're cornering. It sits and it digs and it pushes and it just curves itself around. It carves everything out when it does it. This one doesn't sit. It doesn't have that weight to push those shocks down on such a narrow base. What it does is it pushes and flips. It doesn't have that. It doesn't drop into the suspension when it corners. So it could be tuned in. I think it should have been tuned in like the X Max is out of the box. During testing, I would have thought that hopefully they'd have figured the right oils out or shock settings. But again, you guys, if you go any softer, you're already bottoming out so hard on this thing from small jumps that I don't know what you do there because you're just going to tear up the chassis. Trail Critter RC says would be cool if they made it the Stampede 2.0 at the Stampede price point. RC Master said yeah, it sinks into a turn. So Brock Allen, so it is a price point that people are willing to spend. So that is something to be noted. That $550 range and getting into a really nice higher end RC is definitely there. But there's a lot that you can get into at that price point as well. You could start looking techno. You could start looking a lot of different ways. If you're not looking just into like the biggest name brands, Traxxas and Arma right now for Basher, because a lot of people are really rocking the technos right now too. So again, playing into my reasoning was having the ability to get one early on. It's not one I don't think I'm going to keep it. I'll probably sell it at a very reduced price. This thing is like a car off the lot. The value is going to go, especially after I've driven it. And if they've seen any of the videos, and it's so marred up. That's the other thing, guys. The light buckets, $70 for those things, and they're plastic. They're plastic LED lights. They're not cased in metal like the ones from RC 4-wheel drive, anything like that. And so those things are torn up on the front end from grinding against the ground, which is a real bummer. A real bummer. And so some of my value was in the light kit. Justin Deneen, I paid for my lights. Mine didn't cost $530 with the light kit. I paid $600 out the door for mine with the lights. So, if they sell for $100, then those things really should have metal cases. Aussie RC Playground says, what about the Proline Pro MT? Where does that fit compared to the Max? Why would you pick one over the other? Well, the Proline's pretty expensive for a roller. If you're not somebody that has electronics already, by the time that you put in, if you get really decent electronics and you need to buy a controller, anything, if it's your only car, you'll probably be at that 5+ range, 500 to 600 for a Pro MT, which is about the same size. So, I haven't driven one. I know one of my buddies has one, and he loves it, the Pro MT. So, Justin, I did buy a demo, but that was the pricing with the light kit for the demo was $600. So it wasn't just like demo, you get it for the regular price plus the bonus of the lights. It was factored in when I bought it. But I have it here. And like I said, I think the shocks on this excel compared to the X Max. They haven't really pushed into the point where the body's always getting caught. The bumper on my other one, I can never get the the body on. It always gets hung up on the bumper because it's pushed so far back. But this really, really thin wire, which you can hardly see against my finger here, that's just dumb on that expensive of a light kit. They should have used thicker wires, or at least put a thicker housing on it to bring it through here. So encased it in like even nitro fluid, like the little rubber tubes, something to protect it from the body or whatever it was that cut it. But yeah, the whole light bar's scraped up. The lights are pushing out of here actually a little bit. It needs a little bit of attention. TLC. But overall, I mean, it's a neat idea. And I'm sure that people are going to come out with ways to make it handle better. It's brand new right now. It'd be awesome if J Concepts or somebody did it with their offset wheels on, that you could change the offsets. That would be pretty awesome. And that would give it some more opportunity, but also being 17 millimeter hexes is limiting in a way, because most of the 17 millimeter hex wheels are much bigger than a 10th scale monster truck size. So somebody's going to have to create something to fit in that. Elride Bash at RC says he has a Pro MT and loves it. That's awesome. Everyday Man's Review says, I think 550 is a ripoff for what you get. Plastic drive shafts. I haven't had any issue with the drive shafts. I don't mind plastic drive shafts if they hold up. I will say that I do like the way that the drive shafts are made and that they attach, because I know on my Outcast, ever since I've ended up locking up that front wheel, even when I'm jumping, sometimes somehow it comes out. I don't know if it just, when it expands, or, I might need to put limiter straps on it, because it pops and it's going through the air and it just locks up. And then another one, I thought I busted something because the wheel was jammed, stuck up. I thought I broke another shock, but what it was is the drive shaft came out and then it sat in another little spot that's not as deep. And so because it wouldn't go in as far, it was actually pushing the arm up. So probably 3 times now I've had to actually go in, take off the wheel, and then take off one of the ball ends. They're not ball ends, but the ball suspension parts off of the arms in order to loosen it up enough to reset it. So there's nothing perfect in any setup, but I don't mind the plastic drive shafts in these. I've found them to be very strong based on the hits that I've been doing. So John McClellan says adjust the droop screws. All right. Justin says they're hitting a BMX track tomorrow. It'll probably be dead after that. I don't know, man. They take a beating. Aussie RC asks now, would I buy it again, given what you know? Would you spend the money again on the Max? I wouldn't. Nope. I would have saved up for the 8S Max to replace my 6S. So RC Master says, can I bullet point all the pros and cons, please? I missed the beginning if you've done it already. All right. So here's a quick recap. Price, high. Is it necessary? I think that there's rationale for the price, but I ask myself, is it necessary to be that high price? What could they have taken away to put it at a lower price point to make it fit into the market, I think, better? Because I think a lot of it is Cadillac-ish, that you don't need it to be a luxury basher. So that's point one. Is the value there? It is, but it doesn't need to be. TSM, that's one of the value adds that they have. And it's a must in this vehicle because on 4S, it's so out of control that you really want that TSM turned on to help you handle it a little bit better. Braking is awesome on this. Really great brakes. Stops really well. So that's a super plus on it. Plastic, totally okay with plastic. Plastic drive shafts, I'm okay with that. It does have the metal diffs. It has the metal center drive shaft. The shocks, that for me is overkill. So I would have done smaller shocks. I would have done it, as a way to save money and price it lower. Because as it is, it drives like a brick. And that's with the stock setup that they give you. I guess you could change it, but you're just adding to the price. Any more changes that you make to this thing. Telemetry is a bonus as well, but you got to buy another $35 adapter if you want to see it on your phone. So the controller is better, but the controller needs more physical dials of things that you actually want to set. Right now, all you can set is steering trim and your TSM if you want how much you want it to be. The rest is all done through these little button configurations, which what they could do, if that's what they're going to do, write the directions so you know what your modes are in on here. Put a little sticker on the bottom. I don't know. Something to make this useful to me when I'm out driving in the field and I don't have my manual with me to know how to change my throttle trim or braking power or I don't know, whatever things that you could adjust. It wouldn't be braking, but the things that you should be able to adjust by this, I wish that they would put on the outside. But other than that, I like the feel of it. I really like this little thumb rest. here. It's just really comfortable. For your left hand, I don't like the small wheel. I like a little bit bigger one, but that's personal preference. But the foam that they use actually is very quality on the wheel, and it looks good. So that's that point. It's really tough. If you saw my last video, it has to be tough because it's really hard to control and drive, and so you crash a lot. So it does have that. Like it can stand up to abuse, and you're going to give it abuse because it's so much torque. I actually find that it's harder to jump small jumps than it is big ones because you hit it and it takes off, and it immediately, because of the torquiness, sits up like this. So when you adjust it, it ends up going too far or whatever, and then you try and correct, and then you end up slapping when you hit the ground, and then it tumbles for like ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Once this thing is cartwheeling, it just will keep cartwheeling until it hits something because you're usually carrying a lot of speed. But it's really tough. Body, I'm a huge fan of the single system. I wish more people would come out with other bodies for it. But that's really up to those companies to do. Just like any other RC, you have to, other companies make the extra bodies for it. The RC manufacturers themselves usually only give you one option, maybe a clear version of it, but they don't have like multiple different styles of bodies for their cars. But usually Proline or J Concepts comes through there, and so I'd love to see more bodies. But I do love the single clip system. I just hate body clips. So even though this pops off every once in a while, it hasn't popped off as much as you'd think it would, especially that last video when I just destroyed it over and over and over and over and over and over and over because I couldn't I couldn't control it. I don't know if it's a bad day because I've been sick, but it was just I was frustrated actually driving it. It wasn't fun at that point. So even when I'd land something big, I'd go around and I'd go back to jump and hit it again, and I would crash off the little jump. It was just dumb. Or I'd get over to reset it, and it'd roll over in the corner. It was just really, really frustrating. And you could kind of hear that come out every once in a while that I was commenting on, wow, I've flipped this over now. I can't even keep track now. All right, so what else did I have? Big shocks, yeah. So that's one of the positives, but it's also, I think, a negative because it handles like a brick. It doesn't handle it all like its bigger brother, the X Max, which is what I really wanted, was a miniature version of that. And the shocks and all that aren't set up to mirror that in a smaller vehicle. And so, again, you go lighter, you've got this chassis slap problem that you got to worry about because it's already doing chassis slap with these big shocks on it, which are very stiff. So I don't know. I don't know what to do there. I don't have the answers for that. So what I would do is I would take that same amount of money I would have saved it for an X Max. Because this is smaller. They say, oh, you have a smaller car because you can't always run the X Max everywhere. Well, this one is so fast and so powerful that you pretty much need the same amount of room to run it as an X Max anyway. I actually have an easier time running my X Max in the backyard than I do this. So yeah, the telemetry app is cool. So that's a bonus, but you have to buy the $35 module that goes in here. And then it's a little bit tricky and wonky to get set up. But once it is, I'll give it it's got some cool factor. And what you have to do is it records it so that you can, use it later, but it doesn't make it a video, and you can't save it to your video photos as a video. It saves like a single frame so you can show your top speed. But the problem is that the top speed is actually set whenever you do self-riding, which is all the time. And so that's when it spins the wheels the fastest and hardest. And the way that it's set up using rollout, RPM, and the other factor is what actually determines the speed. It's not how fast it's actually going. It's not GPS based. You can get another expensive add-on system that will hold a GPS unit and all that, but and then it will do it based on GPS. But at that point, I'd buy Dynamite speedometer and stick it on. You can use it in a lot of vehicles that way. So, Chris Watson, I'm having a ton of regrets, but I'm not also because I knew getting it. And so this is sometimes when I buy the more expensive vehicles is I know that I can make money back on YouTube. So that's what pushed me to buy this. That's the answer. Why did I buy it? When it was announced that I could buy it, that the store was selling it, there still weren't a lot of videos out. And the ones that were out were getting a lot of views. And I knew, hey, if I invest in this, there's a great chance that I can make most of my money back. And what I don't make back, I can probably make back when I sell it if I don't like it, which is kind of where I'm at. And I know there's a lot of people that really like it. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be those people. There always are. And so it's just not, I don't think it's for me. But I'm not going to say that completely yet. I'm going to give it a little more time. But as of right now, I kind of am like, I could take it or leave it, which isn't great with a $550 vehicle. Like I don't say that about my Outcast that I just got. That thing is a blast to drive. I actually like it on 4S. Not always doing the big jumps. It's just fun to drive. It levels itself out so well in the air. When it gets kicked, you can just level it so easy. So the controllability of it's a lot easier, but it's a bigger, wider truck than this and sits lower. So there's a lot of factors for it, but that's kind of what I like about it. So, Bar Harbor Basher says, yeah, screen recorder app. So that's what I do is my phone is here. All I did was go in, make sure I'm not on anything. And I've mine set up so that I have a record button right on the phone right here. Right there. And I can hit record and it starts recording. Then I just go back to the app and record it playing back the video file. So it's great. It is pretty cool to be able to overlay it. And it's pretty accurate when you're just, driving around. But your top speed may or may not be accurate unless you're just doing single runs and then resetting it after. Anytime that you do flip, writing and all that, it's going to throw it for a loop. But it's cool because it actually records your audio too as you're driving, so you can sync it up with your video pretty easily based on talking. So I'm going to work on getting myself a 4S Kraton to compare to this thing before I make a decision of whether or not to keep it or sell it. I'm going to also try and refix up the lights. I'm not a big fan of lights in general. These were cool, but they did what I said they'd do, and they broke right away. And it was $70 extra on mine to have lights. So that's not cool. So going back through the comments here, go back to the chat with you guys. I should have been there anyway. Wonder if it's screen recorder apps. That's where I just was. RC Basher Boy joined. RC Basher Boy, I did go out and I drove the Glamosphere and have video of that from last week. I just need to edit. Wayne Crow, I don't think that the self-writing in this is going to be that bad for the diffs. I'm actually surprised at how well it works in these. Because I was on that boat with my 6xS Max. But this does it so quick. And it doesn't seem to stop. It kind of does one, waits, does it again. I don't think it's as bad as we think now. So I did see that JT busted his. I think that was a fluke based on how hard I've beat mine up. So, but I noticed before I got it that it tumbled a lot, and I made mention of it, and I really do feel like it tumbles a lot. It's a monster truck, and the scale speed of it and the design of it is designed like a monster truck, which don't go that speed if you scale it up. So it turns like it should. It's just we're trying to turn it way too fast and at too high a speed. So that's all I'll say to that. But yeah, John McClone says, don't get me started on the UDR. It's the same way. So I hope that was somebody was asking for my questions on that. So Aussie RC Playground, if you guys haven't seen it, did a really crazy cool video with front flipping the Mojave, which was insane. Thanks, Christopher Kerr, for the sub. Yeah, guys, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you like RC Conspiracies. So I've got, yeah, Bar Harbor Basher's right. I should have spent that money on a custom build by him. All the ways that I'm feeling it now. But again, I'm hoping to make some of that back. You guys have seen, again, the views on these have been higher than most of my videos recently. And that's because of just the attention that it gets. So my original X-Max unboxing did pretty well over time. And so definitely over time it'll make its money back, but not in not in a few months or anything. So that's kind of where it came from, guys. I want to just give you my opinion on why I did it, because I know I told you that it wasn't really something I saw a huge use for in my arsenal, and then I went out and bought it anyway. So the basis being purely YouTube driven, to have something that was new and current and people were talking about. And now that I've driven it, I want to give it a fair shake. I'm definitely on the I don't want to play favorites with anybody coming from that standpoint. And I want to give everything a shot. So that said, this thing has some good points to it. There's definitely some strong points to it. And they've built it like a Cadillac of bashers. And that's where it's priced at. So it's like the new Jeep truck that was just released, that's not nearly as capable as any of the others as far as tow capacity or any of that, and yet it's priced above them, with smaller motor package and all of that, because it's kind of like, people will pay it for the name. And so, yes, they do put some trick stuff in it. You can take the top off it. You can take the doors off. Those are cool things. But are they necessary to get your from point A to point B doing your job? Maybe not. So that's how I kind of feel about this Max. But I thank you guys for asking questions and all the comments that people have had, because it's definitely driven a lot of talk. It's and it's been across multiple channels, and so mine, I kept the positive vibe for it. I'm still not like totally downer on it. Some people really have an issue with the price, and I don't. I just don't find the need for a basher at that price when I can get I could get two granites, which I think are amazing, that go 50 miles an hour on 3S. So it's cheaper on batteries, and it's lightweight. It's easy to take with me. Lands really well. Doesn't roll over that much when cornering. There's just a lot of positives for it. So yeah. Anyway, maybe because I'm doing so many back and forth, because when I watched JT's, he hardly rolled it. So, Bar Harbor Basher's got some cool build stuff that they're talking about. Wayne Crow says, P.S. You're not a bad driver. Don't be too hard on yourself. Felt like it the other day, man. That's for sure. I was really frustrated at the end of that run. One, because I busted the light. And two, speaking of that, the battery tray is atrocious. We didn't mention that. Much hate for that. But fixable for pretty cheap, except now those Pure Tech straps are going to be out of stock probably most places for a little while. But because everybody's buying them for their Max. And so I actually hinted that hobby shops should start carrying them and making an upsell on people that buy this. Say, hey, you're going to want this for $10. Might as well get it now. But yeah, it's I'm glad. What I'm happy for is I'm happy that they're taking things, and it's not just a reskin as far as color. They did have to resize this. They did have to do some work to make it 1/10 scale. Is it perfect? I don't think it is. But I'm glad that they're going for it. I just wish that they would come out with maybe a kit version or something that's better price point on this, like 3S Electronics. But having the Max or the Max shape and chassis and all of that is awesome. You know, smaller shocks, smaller motor system, still the plastic, you know, drive shafts and all that, but I think that they could drop the price down and make it still an awesome and fun truck. I think that a 3S truck, even at $350, almost $400. I know that the Outcast and Creighton and them at 4S are $400, but I think that they could probably put in a 3S version of this in that $380 to $400 range, and people would buy it because it's just kind of a cool chassis build on it. But that's my take. That's a better market spot for it. Now, I had mentioned online that they were going to sell like crazy when I saw people's hobby shops getting them all lined up and tons of them. And I went into ours, and I'm the only person that's bought one. They haven't sold any of them that were in there. So it's like, oh, I guess I was wrong on that. I thought it was going to, be flying off the shelves. So I think there is something to that price point that is making it something that people aren't as eager as I thought they would be to get it. So, Chris, yes, thank you for the recommendation on the straps. I ordered them up early that morning when I saw it on the A-Main video. I have their alert set, and I saw it, and I'm like, that's what I need. So, all right, guys, well, I've been going for a little while here, past an hour now. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. But thank you for tuning in, as always, guys. We definitely do this for you and for just trying to grow the hobby and bring awareness to what's happening here in the hobby. There's definitely some stuff cooking over in the Arma camp, which makes me wonder if there's more cooking in the Traxxas camp, because, you know, we had the 6x6 and now the Max. Kind of following up some of the stuff from Axial and from Arma. So we've already been hearing that there's stuff over in the Arma camp, and I wonder if there's something else cooking in the Traxxas camp, like Driftomaniacs was saying, to be announced after and try and steal some thunder from Arma. So it's kind of one of those things like, who can wait the longest before announcing it, but they definitely want to get it out before Christmas. If Traxxas does have anything else waiting. But I think that we're getting something else from Arma soon, based on the post over on the Arma RC Army Facebook page by Jason, who's the founder of Arma, and told somebody just kind of hold on a little bit. So I think something's coming probably before Christmas based on that little bit thing. And something else to be thinking about and waiting for. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Keep the conspiracy pot stirred over on our Facebook group, RC Conspiracies. Lots of people are posting up stuff over there, which is where we also got the screenshot of that Arma post about what might be coming. But be sure to let me know anything that you might hear, any whispers that are stirring, and we'll catch you guys next time. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week on RC Conspiracies. Oh yeah, that's a good groove. don't forget to go and buy some RC Conspiracies merch. It'll make you cooler, and it'll keep the aliens at bay.